Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of NASCAR's Lost Teams, Morgan McClure Motorsports. Morgan McClure Motorsports is a former NASCAR Cup Series team that competed from 1983 through 2010. Several notable drivers spent time behind the wheel of one of the team's race cars, such as Mark Martin, Ernie Irvan, Sterling Marlin, Bobby Hamilton, Jimmy Spencer, Mike Wallace, and Ward Burton, among plenty of others. In fact, 32 different drivers made at least one start for Morgan McClure Motorsports throughout their existence. The team originally formed when business partners Larry McClure and Tim Morgan purchased a race car from G.C. Spencer in 1983. Connie Saylor drove the race car for Spencer prior to Morgan McClure purchasing the team. Saylor would make the team's debut start at Talladega in the spring behind the wheel of a number 4 Oldsmobile, starting 33rd and finishing 40th after a blown engine ended his race early on lap 22. Following their debut race, McClure fired Connie Saylor while waiting to purchase the rights to the number 4 in an effort to find a younger driver. Their next start came at Michigan in the early summer, and McClure had Mark Martin behind the wheel of the number 4 Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles. Mark Martin made 6 starts for the team throughout the second half of the 1983 season. Mark Martin's best start was 8th, and his best finish was 10th, both coming at Talladega in the summer. Overall, in 6 starts, Martin scored 1 top 10. At the conclusion of the 83 Cup Series season, Martin and Morgan McClure Motorsports parted ways. The 1984 NASCAR Cup Series season saw McClure hire Lenny Pond to drive the number 4 Chevrolet for what was intended to be full-time, though after the first 4 starts of the season, Pond was released. Tony Glover became the number 4 team's crew chief in 1984. Pond's best start was 19th at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 13th at Daytona in the spring. Starting at race 5 in Bristol, Tom Ellis took over the number 4 Chevrolet. His best start was 5th, and his best finish was 9th, both coming at Talladega in the summer. The team was still really young, and the only competitive race cars they were really fielding were at super speedways. Overall, in 20 starts, Ellis scored 1 top 10. Following race 27 at North Wilkesboro, Ellis and Morgan McClure parted ways. Then the final 3 starts of the 1984 season were made by Joe Ruttman. His best start was 16th, and his best finish was 10th, both coming at Riverside in the fall. Overall, in 3 starts, Ruttman scored 1 top 10. For the 1985 NASCAR Cup Series season, Morgan McClure Motorsports would run an entire season with the same driver behind the wheel of the race car, and also signed the team's first full primary sponsor. Joe Ruttman returned to the number 4 Folgers Coffee Chevrolet, making select starts throughout the 85 season. For the first time in the team's short existence, they were able to have competitive cars on track other than super speedways. Ruttman's best start was 4th at Darlington in the fall, and his best finish was 5th at Charlotte in the fall. Overall, in 16 starts, Ruttman scored 1 top 5 and 4 top 10s, finishing 30th in final Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the season, Ruttman and Morgan McClure Motorsports parted ways. In 1986, McClure would sign Rick Wilson to drive the team's number 4 Cap and Cody's Kodak Film Oldsmobile. Again, the team would make select starts throughout the 86 season. Wilson's best start was 5th at Dover in the fall, and his best finish was 7th at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 17 starts, Wilson scored 4 top 10s, finishing 28th in final Cup Series point standings. Lake Speed made a one-off start for the team at Charlotte in the World 600, starting 19th and finishing 14th. After changing drivers several times since the team's debut in 1983, starting in 1987, Morgan McClure Motorsports would retain the driver that had behind the wheel of the number 4 in 1986, Rick Wilson, making select starts again in 87, then running full-time in 1988 and 89. For the first time ever, and one of the only times the team would throughout its history, in the 1987 Daytona 500, they fielded 2 entries, a number 4 for Rick Wilson, then a number 14 for A.J. Foyt. Foyt started 41st and finished 42nd, when a malfunctioning spark plug ended his race early on lap 10. As for the number 4 Kodak Film Oldsmobile, they had a pretty difficult season, netting 11 DNFs in just 19 starts. Wilson's best start was 4th at Dover in the fall, and his best finish was 7th at Bristol in the fall. Overall, in 19 starts, Wilson scored 1 top 10, finishing 28th in final Cup Series point standings. Rick Wilson had a couple pretty solid seasons to finish out the 1980s in 88 and 89 behind the wheel of the number 4 Kodak Film Oldsmobile. Pete Wright served as crew chief for the number 4 team in 1989. And 89 would end up being the stronger of the two seasons for Morgan McClure Motorsports. Wilson's best start was first at Bristol in the spring of 88. This would end up being Morgan McClure's first ever pole, and his best finish was second at Daytona in the summer of 88. Overall, 57 starts in 1988 and 89, Wilson scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 4 top 5s, and 12 top 10s, with the best points finish of 17th in 1989. At the conclusion of the 89 season, Wilson and Morgan McClure Motorsports parted ways. As the number 4 team entered the 1990s, plans as far as a new driver were thought to be all figured out, as McClure would sign Phil Parsons to drive the number 4 Kodak Film Oldsmobile for what was intended to be full-time. Though after only 3 races, Parsons was released. His best start was 8th at Daytona in the spring, and his best finish was 14th at Rockingham in the spring. Ernie Irvan would take over the number 4 full-time, starting at race 4 in Atlanta in 1990, all the way to race 21 at Bristol in 1993. By far, Ernie Irvan was Morgan McClure's best driver to date, and really, at least as good as any driver that they ever had drive for the team. Irvan's best start was first 9 times, at Bristol and Pocono in the spring, in Richmond in the fall of 1990, Talladega in the spring of 1991, Talladega in the spring, then Bristol and Richmond in the fall of 92, then Dover in the spring, and Daytona in the summer of 93. His best finish was first 7 times, at Bristol in the fall of 1990, which was Morgan McClure Motorsports' first career Cup Series victory, the Daytona 500 in Watkins Glen in the summer of 1991, Sonoma in the spring, then Daytona and Talladega in the summer of 92, Talladega in the spring of 93. Now, the first few years went well between Morgan McClure Motorsports and Ernie Irvan, with both finding the most success as they ever had previously in the sport. So, of course, things were alright. Though a tragedy for the Allison family would end up causing this team and driver to fracture, with Davey Allison losing his life in a helicopter accident that left his team, Robert Yates Racing's number 28 Texaco Haviland Ford, without a driver. Yates asked Irvan to take over the number 28. This upset McClure, and a very ugly lawsuit ensued. In the end, Irvan got out of the team, but both sides ended up with bad feelings toward each other. Overall, in 105 starts, Irvan scored 9 poles, 7 wins, 33 top 5s, and 51 top 10s, with the best points finish of 5th in 1991. Jeff Purvis would make 5 starts, with the best start of 18th at Richmond in the fall, and the best finish of 13th at Dover in the fall. Joe Nemechek made the next 2 starts at the number 4 Kodak Chevrolet. His best start was 11th at Charlotte in the fall, and his best finish was 23rd at Rockingham in the fall. To finish out the 1993 season, Jimmy Hensley made the final 2 starts of the season. His best start was 17th, and his best finish was 25th, both coming in Atlanta in the fall. The following season, in 1994, Morgan McClure Motorsports would sign Sterling Marlin to drive the number 4 Kodak Film Chevrolet full-time from 1994 through 1997. Right out of the gate, Marlin and the team won the 1994 Daytona 500, with engines built by Runt Pittman. They even repeated in 1995, with back-to-back Daytona 500 victories, and 3 in total now. All in all, 1995 would end up being Marlin's best season, and honestly, the team's best season that they would ever have. Though by 1997, Marlin and the number 4 Chevrolet team went winless and fell out of the top 20 in final point standings, thus making them choose to part ways at the conclusion of the 1997 season. Marlin's best start was first, twice, at Phoenix in the fall of 1994 and Talladega in the summer of 1995. His best finish was first 6 times, at Daytona in the spring of 1994, at Daytona and Darlington in the spring, and then Talladega in the summer of 1995, Talladega in the spring and Daytona in the summer of 1996. Overall, in 124 starts, Marlin scored 2 poles, 6 wins, 21 top 5s, and 49 top 10s, with the best points finish of 3rd in 1995. After choosing 2 winning drivers, the last 2 times when the number 4 needed a new driver, Bobby Hamilton was chosen to replace the departing Sterling Marlin to drive the number 4 from 1998 through 2000. Hamilton's best start was first, and his best finish was first, both coming at Martinsville in the spring of 1998. This would end up being the team's final pole and victory of its NASCAR career. 1998 and 1999 were both pretty solid seasons, before results really fell off in 2000. Overall, in 101 starts, Hamilton scored 1 pole, 1 win, 4 top 5s, and 20 top 10s, with a best points finish of 10th in 1998. This would also be the team's final season that they would ever finish inside the top 10 in the Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the 2000 season, Hamilton and Morgan McClure Motorsports parted ways. McClure believed that the team had found their next driver in Robbie Gordon, though after the first 5 starts, he was released. Gordon's best start was 24th in Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 20th in Atlanta in the spring. Following race 5 in Darlington, Gordon and the team parted ways. Kevin LePage would get behind the wheel of the number 4 Kodak Film Chevrolet. His best start was 18th at Talladega in the spring, and his best finish was 11th at Texas in the spring. Following race 28 in Kansas, LePage left the team. Rich Bickle made a one-off start for Morgan McClure Motorsports at Martinsville in the fall, starting 18th and finishing 31st. Bobby Hamilton Jr. made the final 7 starts of the 2001 season. His best start was 23rd at Charlotte in the fall, and his best finish was 14th at Talladega in the fall. The 2002 NASCAR Cup Series season saw the number 4 Kodak Chevrolet get a full-time driver once again in Mike Skinner. Though by this point, the team was not putting out competitive race cars, and really never would again. Scott Eggleston began the season as the number 4 team's crew chief, but Chris Carrier took over starting at race 12 in Charlotte. Skinner's best start was 2nd at Loudon in the summer, and his best finish was 6th at Rockingham in the fall. Overall, Skinner scored 1 top 10, finishing 31st in final Cup Series point standings. Skinner would begin the 2003 season, making the first 14 starts for Morgan McClure Motorsports. His best start was 3rd at Charlotte in the spring, and his best finish was 11th at Darlington in the spring. Following race 14 at Pocono, Skinner and the team parted ways. Johnny Miller made the next start at Sonoma, starting 36th and finishing 24th. Stacy Compton made a one-off start for the number 4 team at Daytona in the summer, starting 43rd and finishing 33rd. Johnny Sauter made 5 starts in the number 4 Kodak Pontiac. His best start was 21st at Bristol in the fall, and his best finish was 23rd at Loudon in the summer. P.J. Jones made a one-off start at Watkins Glen in the summer, starting 33rd and finishing 24th. They also ran a second entry at Watkins Glen, a number 04 Pontiac, with Johnny Miller behind the wheel, starting 32nd and finishing 36th. Tim Brewer replaced Chris Carrier as the team's crew chief. Kevin LePage made the final 8 starts of the season in the number 4. His best start was 5th at Charlotte in the fall, and his best finish was 14th in Atlanta in the fall. Things didn't really improve for the 2004 season. In fact, at the conclusion of the previous season, longtime sponsor Eastman Kodak would stop sponsoring the team after longer than a 15-year sponsorship from the film company. McClure thought that he had found a primary sponsor for the number 4, YokeTV.com, though they never paid the bills to the team, leaving Morgan McClure Motorsports to run the first part of the season unsponsored. Kevin LePage made the first 6 starts in the number 4 Chevrolet. His best start was 26th, and his best finish was 22nd, both coming at Rockingham in the spring. LePage and Morgan McClure parted ways. Jimmy Spencer would be the team's next driver, making 25 starts, picking up sponsorship from Lucas Oil Products during Spencer's time driving for the team. Spencer's best start was 22nd, twice, at California in the spring and Charlotte in the fall. Tim Brewer and Chris Carrier swapped crew chief positions, again starting at race 26 in Richmond. Mike Wallace made the final 3 starts of the 04 season. His best start was 28th in Homestead in the fall, and his best finish was 29th in Phoenix in the fall. In 2005, Mike Wallace returned to the number 4 Lucas Oil Products Chevrolet for all but the road course races and a couple other starts. Wallace's best start was 15th twice, at Bristol and Kansas in the fall, and his best finish was 8th at Daytona in the summer. Overall, in 28 starts, Wallace scored 1 top 10, finishing 35th in final Cup Series point standings. P.J. Jones made the 2 road course starts. His best start was 36th at Watkins Glen in the late summer, and his best finish was 32nd at Sonoma in the summer. Johnny Andretti made a one-off start in Michigan in the late summer, starting 23rd and finishing 28th in the number 4. Todd Bodine also made a one-off start at Homestead in the fall in the number 4, starting 24th and finishing 20th. For the 2006 NASCAR Cup Series season, Scott Wimmer became the new driver of the number 4 Aero Exhaust Chevrolet for what ended up being almost a full season, parting ways with the team following a D&Q at race 29 in Kansas. Wimmer's best start was 6th at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was 19th at Bristol in the spring. P.J. Jones made one start at Sonoma, starting 15th and finishing 36th. Todd Bodine made 2 starts in the number 4. His best start was 14th, and his best finish was 19th, both coming in Charlotte in the fall. Ward Burton made the final 3 starts of the 2006 season. Burton's best start was 24th at Phoenix in the fall, and his best finish was 25th at Texas in the fall. What ended up being the final season that Morgan McClure would qualify for more than one race would end up being 2007. Ward Burton would return to the number 4 State Water Heaters Chevrolet full-time. Though they would attempt all the races, they would only qualify for 16 events. Burton's best start was 13th at Dover in the spring, and his best finish was 14th at Indianapolis in the summer. Not attempting anything in 2008, then making their final start at Bristol in the fall of 2009, Scott Wimmer drove a number 4 Alpha Natural Resources Chevrolet, starting 26th and finishing 29th. The final attempt that the team would make would come at their home track in Bristol in the fall of 2010, when they would D&Q. So, in 703 NASCAR Cup Series starts, Morgan McClure Motorsports scored 13 poles, 14 wins, 63 top 5s, and 146 top 10s, with the best points finish of 3rd by Sterling Marlin in 1995. Thanks, everyone. Take care.